and welcome to my channel. This is Makeup by Mackenzie and I'm Mackenzie, obviously. Today on Makeup 101 we are going to be talking about contour and highlight. Now neither of these two steps are necessary in your makeup journey, but they're pretty popular right now. So I feel like it would be a good idea to talk about them and talk about an easy way to kind of introduce yourself into the world of contouring and highlighting. So without any further ado, let's play with some makeup, shall we? Alright, so let's start with contour. Contour is basically used to give shape to an area of the face or to enhance facial features. It can be used to kind of chisel out your facial features. It can be used to give your face dimension. So basically, contour is used to create shadows on your face to give it a shape. When you put foundation and concealer all over your face, you create kind of a flat base, but your face will end up looking very one-dimensional. Things like contour, bronzer, blush, highlight are meant to bring back life and shape and dimension to your face. Contour products usually come in cream or powder form, and like I mentioned in the blush and bronzer video, I find that powder contour is easier to use than cream contour. If you missed the blush and bronzer video, I will have that linked up here for you. I want to make it perfectly clear that bronzer and contour are two different things. So I mentioned in the bronzer video that bronzer can either be warm or cool toned. However, contour should always be cool toned because you're creating a shadow, whereas bronzer is meant to bring warmth back to the face. So this is my normal bronzer that I use all the time. This is the Rimmel Natural Bronzer. You can see it's almost got a orange undertone to it. It's more of a like clay color. Whereas, now this is the contour that I will be using in today's video. And this is from the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Contour little duo here that comes with a highlighter as well. So this is the color that I'm going to be using. This clearly is going to bring warmth back to the face, whether it is cool toned or warm toned. This is going to create a shadow. So that you can tell that even though you have a cool toned or a warm toned bronzer, it's going to have a different color profile than a contour. Now, again with bronzers also typically come in matte and shimmery finishes. And I told you that I prefer matte finishes, but that's really about personal preference. You would be hard pressed to find a contour product that is not matte, but there are some out there. However, your contour should be matte, because when you're trying to create a shadow, you don't want to put anything in that area that's going to reflect light. And so if you put a shimmer or a glitter product in that area, it's going to do the exact opposite of what you want to do. So having a matte product is going to create a shadow like you want. How do you pick the right contour for your skin tone? Well, remember when I talked about concealer? Concealer was supposed to be 1 to 2 shades lighter than your skin tone because you might use that to highlight. A contour should be the exact opposite. It should be about 1 to 2 shades darker than your skin tone. Alrighty, so let's move on to highlight. So highlight does the exact opposite of contour. If a contour creates a shadow, you are creating the opposite of a shadow. Sunlight? You're creating light? I don't know. When you place something somewhere that's dark, it's going to cause that to recede back. But the exact opposite happens when you apply something that is light. It's going to bring that area forward. So highlight is traditionally placed in places that the sun naturally is going to hit. But it also can be placed in areas that you want to highlight, that places that you want to draw the eye to. Like contour, highlighters can come in cream or powder formulas. They also come in liquid formulas. But again, like contour, blush, and bronzer, highlighter that is a powder I find is easier to use. Unlike contour, you can do pretty much whatever you want with highlighters. They come in all sorts of colors. They come in all sorts of finishes, matte, shimmery, metallic, come in all sorts of colors, so you can really have some fun with highlighters. However, it helps to know kind of the basics, and I'd say if you're brand new to highlighters, start more natural and work your way to a little bit more blending. Now, highlighting really starts with your concealer. Even before you apply anything like crazy, like a shimmery powder or cream. But it really starts with your concealer, which is why your concealer should be 1 to 2 shades lighter than your skin tone. So here's a little quick video about where I'll show you how I did my concealer for today. So I started off by applying it under my eyes, and that's a great place to highlight, especially if you have dark circles. It really brings that area forward, it brightens it up, and you can also use that same area to kind of highlight your cheekbones as well, the tops of your cheekbones. Then I went and highlighted where my frown lines are. I tend to have pretty defined frown lines, as you can see, and so I went and put just a little stripe down that area, just to kind of bring that area forward a little bit too. And then I highlighted my chin, right down the center of my nose, the center of my forehead, and then I highlighted along my cupid's bow as well. Now after you have blended that in and you have set your face with the setting powder, you can go over those areas with something like a matte brightening powder. And so the one I used is the Essence Brighten Up Banana Powder. And this is a powder that's meant to do exactly what it says. It's meant to brighten up those areas. So it creates another layer of brightening to brighten up your under eyes, brighten up the areas that you have highlighted, things like that. So this is something like that is a really nice added thing. So I have my foundation, my concealer, and I have my eyes and eyebrows done. And my face is looking pretty flat. So I think it's time to start with some contour. I like to do my contour the very first step that I do before I do blush, bronzer, highlight. I like to do the contour first, but that's really personal preference. So I'm going to be using the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Contour palette. I'm not going to be using the highlighter in that today. I personally don't really care for this highlighter, but I really do like the contour. When you're applying contour, you do not want to do this with a big fluffy brush, because it's not like a bronzer where you can kind of fluff it out and make your face really glowy. This is something you want to put in a specific area and you want it there. You do not want to spread it around your face. You want to blend it in, but you don't want it to be all over the place. Now I'm going to use an angled brush. It's not even though it is fluffy, it's not very big, and the bristles are a little bit more tightly compact than, say, a brush like this. And the angled brush, the angled aspect, is really going to help me to get into the contours of my face. I'm just going to go ahead and get some on my brush here. The first place I like to start is the cheekbone. When we talked about bronzer, we talked about how bronzer goes really right underneath your cheekbone, and then you blend it upwards towards where you would put your blush. Your contour is going to go right below where you would put your bronzer. Make a fish face at yourself. That's where it's going to go, right in that line, kind of from your ear down towards the corner of your mouth. And you don't want to connect it all the way there. You're going to probably end right about here. So I'm going to start here at the base by my ear, and I'm going to sweep downwards like that. And then you can start to blend it in, but you're not going to make as big of circles as you would with your bronzer. You're going to make circles, but they're going to be a little bit more narrow. With contour, you really want to start with a small amount and build it up until you get what you want, because you do not want to look like you have a big strip right here. So the next place that you want to put your contour is your temple. So right here, you feel that? It's going to go right in there. You're going to do kind of circular motions to blend it out. And that part you can skip if you really don't like the way that looks. The next place for contouring is along your hairline. If you have a bigger forehead, this will create the illusion of a smaller forehead. And I find that even if I'm doing bronzer, I like to add bronzer or contour to this area because I do have a large forehead. So when I don't put anything there, it makes my forehead look improportionately large to the rest of my face. I like to take my contour and just run it right along that area there. The next place we're going to apply some contour is below the jawline. And if you remember when we were talking about where we're applying bronzer, we were applying it right on the jawline here. With contour, we're going to go below the jawline. So again, I'm going to start back here and start brushing forward so that I'm getting below the jawline. And I just go back and forth. And that's going to create the illusion of a more sharp jawline. So the last place I'm going to contour is my nose. And I'm not big on doing the really snatched, teeny tiny rhinoplasty looking nose. But that's, again, personal preference. If you like the way that looks, great. Go ahead and do that. You do you, boo-boo. I know James Charles really likes that kind of nose, and he rocks it. So do what makes you feel comfortable. But when it comes to contouring your nose, I prefer using a small angled brush. And I'll just take some of that on there. And I go down along the sides of my nose. Like this. And the point of that is just to make your nose look smaller. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you see I've created two lines here and I've blended them out. The closer you put the two lines together, the smaller your nose is going to look. My problem with nose contour is oftentimes it looks like people have two lines going down their nose. Which is fine for drag queens and things like that, but I really prefer looking a little bit more natural. So I like to, once I'm done with that, go over my nose contour with my powder brushes for like setting my face, and just to diffuse it a little bit to make it not look so strong. So you can see that I really like a softer contour. I don't really like heavy contour on me. But that's my personal preference, as I've said kind of a million times at this point. But you should feel free to experiment with the contour that you like. If you want to try going ham with contour, do that. If you prefer a softer contour like I do, that's great. Do what feels comfortable for you and do what works for your face shape. A lot of it is experimentation. Let's move on to highlighters. So I showed you how to highlight with your concealer, and a lot of the same things that you highlight with concealer, you could also highlight with a powder. My favorite highlighter, to be honest, is an eyeshadow. It is the L'Oreal Infallible Eyeshadow in the shade Iced Latte. Your highlighters do not have to be highlighters. They can be eyeshadows. And your eyeshadows do not have to be eyeshadows. They can be highlighters too. So I like to use this. And it's a very blinding highlight. So that's what I'm going to use today. But I encourage you to start a little bit more natural and work your way up to using a blinding highlight. I'm just using one today so that you guys can see it. Now, highlighters can be applied with a more fluffy brush, but they should be smaller fluffy brushes. You don't want to use kind of a giant fluffy brush like what you might use for bronzer or for blush. You're going to want to use something a little bit smaller. So you can use brushes that kind of look like these. This is a fan brush, and I personally don't really care for fan brushes, but they're great if you want to make sure that your highlighter is concentrated right on the top of your cheekbone, right down the center of your nose, things like that. It really pinpoints the area that you want your highlighter to be in. I personally don't care for them, but again, personal preference. My favorite highlighting brush is this one from Real Techniques. This is the Real Techniques setting brush, and I just think it grabs onto the product really well and it distributes it nice. Alright, so I'm going to take that highlighter shade and I'm going to take my brush and just dip it right in there. And again, you can build your highlighters, so start small and build them up, but honestly that really depends on the highlighter, because some highlighters can be really blinding right away and not very buildable because they're blinding right away, whereas other ones can be a little bit more natural, and then as you build them up they become a little bit more blinding. So when you're highlighting, you want to highlight on the top of your cheekbone, which is where the sun is going to hit. So if you contour down here, you highlight up here, right on the top of that cheekbone. You just sweep it along there, like that. And I like to do little circular motions. You can do back and forth motions like this. You can do little circular ones. I kind of go back and forth between circular and kind of swipey motions. And I like to also bring it up kind of towards the temple as well. All right, so the next place I'm going to highlight is right down the center of my nose. And I like to use the same brush because, again, I don't really care for a super snatched looking nose. But if you do, it's a good idea to take a smaller brush and go right down the center of your nose. James Charles does a good tutorial on how to do that. So I would go check out James Charles if you really like having a super snatched nose. But for my sake, I'm going to use the same brush. And I'm just going to go right on the tip here, just like that, and then I'm going to go right on the bridge, like that. And then I kind of like to take my finger and just kind of blend it out a little bit. Another place, some people like to highlight right in the center of the forehead, kind of like where you put your concealer, and that's perfectly fine. I don't, because I tend to have an oily T-zone, so my forehead gets oily pretty easily. And I find that when I put a highlight in that area, it makes it look oilier, and so when it's already going to be oily by the end of the day, I don't want it to look oilier sooner, so I tend to leave that area matte. However, you can highlight right above the brow bone here, and you can keep it close. Sometimes when I'm doing a little bit more of a natural look, I like to keep the highlight close to the top of the arch of the brow. But if you're doing something a little bit more glowy, you can kind of start there and then start to sweep it up along here. So start close to the top of the brow and then start to blend it upwards. One of my favorite places to highlight is the Cupid's bow. What is the Cupid's bow? It is the top of your lips. So this area where your lips kind of create a V or an M shape, that is where you're going to highlight. So just put your brush right there and just go back and forth along the top of your lips. Boom! I just think that looks really pretty. Another place that I like to highlight is around the eyes, and there are 2 points that you want to highlight around the eyes. And for this, you're going to want to use a smaller brush. You can either use a small, flat packing brush like this one, or you can use more of a pointed, rounded brush like this one. I'm going to use the small, flat packing brush, and I'm going to take some of that highlight again on that brush. And I'm going to highlight right on the inner corner, right here. Just like that. And that kind of just makes your eyes pop. It makes the attention go right to your eyes. This is also a great trick for if you're just trying to run out the door but you want to look super bright and awake. Just pop some highlighter or a matte white or something like that on the inner corner of your eye, and it's going to brighten up your eyes a lot without making it look like you have a ton of makeup on. So the last place I'm going to highlight, and I typically don't like to use a super shimmery shade for this, but for today's purposes I am. I'm going to take that same brush and I'm going to highlight just under my brow bone, and then I can start to blend that down towards the tail. But I don't want to like highlight right down the tail. I want to keep it concentrated mostly right under the arch of my eyebrow, and then blend it towards the tail. So I'm going to start here, like that, and then I'm just going to start kind of flicking it. Like blush and bronzer, if you have applied too much highlight or too much contour, especially if it's powder, you can just go over it with your fluffy setting powder brush and just diffuse it a little bit, and that will help to kind of tampen down the amount of pigment that you have put on. Another thing I like to do to kind of blend everything together is end with my blush. And I find that blush helps to kind of blend everything together. So today I'm going to be using the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. Looks like that. Alright, so now everything except my lipstick is done. You can tell now, if you look back from the beginning of the video to now, you can just tell my face has a little bit more life, a little bit more dimension to it. It really does help to elevate your look. So it's something I think that is worth at least experimenting with. And if it's not for you, then it's not for you. If you have any other questions about contour or highlight, please put them down in the comments below and I will gladly answer your questions for you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more Makeup 101 videos in the future. Also, if you have any ideas for future Makeup 101 videos, please put those suggestions down in the comments below as well. I would love to hear your suggestions and I really want to do what you guys want to know about. So let me know. Alright, that's all I have for today. Remember, makeup has no rules. They're more like guidelines. So you do you, boo-boo. Alright, see you next time, everyone. We are going to be talking about So basically, your concealer is not concealer. I will have that linked up here for you. Up here, yeah. And the point of that is to make your... Whoops, just dropped something. Did I just say the same thing twice? Ooh, look at that nose highlight. Look at that, look at that. Glowy. What is the Cupid's bow? It is